Hello from North Carolina. This is our 8th live session. I can't believe this is number 8. So our plan, as always, is to go live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to share industry news from the previous week. If you are team live and joining us live, please comment below so we know that you are here. That's sort of our way of doing a virtual mic check. If you are team replay, please also share your comments or any questions as they come up. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rosalinda Cruz, and I am the founder and chief business development officer of the ASOR Collective, where we help underrepresented leaders in fashion with strategic planning and advising. Our mission is to support a more diverse and inclusive, sustainable fashion industry by filling in the leadership and ownership gaps in the apparel supply chain. So on these lives, one of the things that I try to do is really reconcile my love for fashion and retail and balance that with my values around sustainability as well as diversity and inclusion. I am really trying to advocate for supply change as well as raise buyer awareness. It's interesting because last week, I talked a little bit about call out culture and how that is alive and well in the world, but definitely in the world of sustainable fashion. And while I do think that that is important and absolutely needed, I do feel like there are enough people out there doing that. That's not something that I necessarily need to do. But one of the things that I want to do is really call people in, right, and allow space for discussion to happen, and also acknowledging that that's going to be a messy looking process and it's going to be uncomfortable. But I want to be able to hold space for those conversations to happen, because I feel like in those conversations is where real solutions and alternative ways of doing business sort of come through. You are going to see that in action. I mean, those who know me know that empathy is sort of my superpower. I am a listener, but when I listen, I really try to listen for understanding. And again, I am open to dialogue, and I'm going to be actively practicing calling people in. It's going to be interesting, so bear with me as I figure out what that looks like in the context of this live segment, but just in sustainable fashion in general. So in our time together, I cover North Carolina news, product, service, workforce, any epiphanies that have happened, as well as the green carpet. Let's get into it. I'm just going to check all my screens and make sure everything is going smoothly. Again, if you are joining us live, please share a comment below. Let us know that you are here. But announcements, I wanted to let everybody know that I'm actually going to be hosting another executive roundtable. That is going to be happening on January 19th. That is an invite only roundtable. So keep an eye on your inbox for an invite. Essentially what happens at these roundtables is I have representatives from the various links in the apparel value chain. And what we're going to be doing is reflecting on 2021 and really, the last couple of years, but reflecting on that so that we can be best prepared for 2022. So I am looking forward to that. If you're interested in learning more about our executive roundtables, please feel free to reach out to me. I am also hosting a workshop this week. So it is workshop week. That was my silly dance. My dance moves are rusty, so I won't subject you to that anymore. But I am hosting a 2022 virtual planning workshop. It's on this Thursday. We have a few seats remaining that's taking place at 1 p.m. You can go to our website, aceworkcollective.com, to find out more about that. And I will be sure to drop that link in the comments below. Whew, all right. Let's get into it. So North Carolina news. There wasn't really a lot of news, and I wasn't even sure if this belonged in North Carolina news, but the National Retail Federation announced their sustainability speakers for the big show, which is happening in January. So one of the 5 sustainability leaders who will be speaking is our own Rowan Atwood, who was formerly at Wrangler and Contour and is now the Director of Sustainability at Tractor Supply Company. I had the privilege of working with him on a project at Wrangler called Rooted. So yay, Rowan, and I hope to see you at the big show. Industry news. Chanel. They are snapping up manufacturers to strengthen their supply chain, which I thought that was interesting. There is a new interview series called Sunday Selvage. And this Sunday they had the series was focused on cone denim. And it's interesting because cone denim started it started in New York City, actually, in 1891, but it actually started here or grew here in North Carolina. So essentially it started in New York City when 2 brothers, Moses and Caesar Cone, founded the Cone Export and Commission Company in 1891, again in New York City. And that company acted as a marketing agency for 90% of Southern mill owners. And the company saved many failing Southern cotton mills from bankruptcy because they brought them much improved sales and encouraged them to develop better products. So I thought that was interesting, given that it feels like history sort of repeating itself, right? Because there has been, I feel like the conversation around reshoring and nearshoring has definitely heightened in the last 18 to 20 months, and absolutely so, given all of the strains on the supply chain. But one of the things that is really interesting is that I do feel like there is a tremendous opportunity around working with manufacturers on innovative ways of doing business and using technology to leverage some of their existing processes. So it'll be interesting to see how that transformation takes place over the next couple of years. In product news, everybody's getting into resale. So Burberry is now going to be offering a trench rental and resale. They are partnering with My Wardrobe HQ, so I thought that was interesting. One of the things that I have been seeing is more and more luxury brands entering the resale market, which is very exciting, especially with news of circular apparel. So that is interesting. Vegan leather versus real leather, what's worse for the environment? It's interesting because I saw this article and read this article last week, and I wanted to say it was a crock. I'm just going to say it. When I feel like it was years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I bought a purse that was vegan leather. And when I looked at it, I was like, this is pleather. And I thought, wow, that is an interesting marketing trick, right? To call it vegan leather. And it was only recently that that I seen people openly discuss the fact that it is pleather. Yeah, so interesting article on that. Again, if you're interested in learning more about that, please sign up for our show notes. I will again drop the link in the comments so you guys can get access to those show notes. More advent calendar heckling for Chanel. So BOF did an article last week about the advent calendar and how Chanel is still, relentlessly being heckled for that. But Dior and Tiffany apparently understood the assignment and they are doing it right. I mean, advent calendars are something that we see in abundance of during the holiday season, but it was nice to hear that these guys got it right. Farfetch, Second Life, they are expanding resale. They have actually been in the resale game since 2019, but that is something that they are going to be expanding in. Ralph Lauren is selling gender neutral winter sportswear, which is inspired by the 1990s sort of polo sport line. And apparently this is an era that is trending with Gen Z. So more on that. And also in gender neutral fashion, I just learned that Victoria's Secret is also offering gender neutral intimate apparel. So kudos to them for that. Oh, what else is happening? Ooh, this was an interesting one, actually. So apparently there is going to be an impact on tech bros and financial tech bros. The Midtown uniform that Patagonia is known for is going to be that much harder to get. Apparently, Patagonia has made a decision to no longer sell these vests to financial firms. They had a corporate co-branding policy, but they decided that they are going to move away from that and say that they're only going to be co-branding with a small collection of like-minded brands. And those brands are going to be aligned in areas of outdoor sports, and relevant gear. I believe they said that they are actually specifically going to be only partnering their corporate sales programs with companies that are either B Corp certified or part of 1% for the planet. So I thought that was interesting. In service news, one of the things that I found really interesting too is that there have been all of these great gift wrapping alternatives, which has been really great, and how to either repurpose, right, recycled paper or fabrics. I thought that was really sweet. I love gift wrapping. That was my first job in retail. So although I feel like my gift wrapping game has slipped a bit in the last couple of years, but ThreadUp and Grove are partnering, and I just saw this yesterday or maybe today, but they are partnering around giving your closet and your laundry room an eco makeover. And this kind of goes back to the subject that I touched on last week around conscious coupling, right? So how do you partner with another brand in a way to provide more value to your customers? And this is a great example of that, right? And other news, retail of the future. And I've been saying this for years, right? Old school and new school are going to be merging. So one of the things that people have been talking about is the customer basically the customer experience that is experienced in a physical store is going to be merged with the online experience, right? So you are going to be seeing more sort of concierge style white glove service, both in the online space as well as on the in brick and mortar locations, right? And obviously, technology is going to be leveraged to help facilitate this elevated service. But again, we know that a lot of the research that consumers do is online, but the actual purchase is often made in store. So one of the things that this sort of merger of old school and new school is going to do is really reduce the friction, right, in the customer buying process, and elevate the service that they receive. So that is really interesting. Manufacturing is coming home. So people are talking about how the strain that we are experiencing on the supply chain is really going to extend beyond 2022. So supply chains are undergoing a revolution. That's what the experts are saying, right? And businesses are going to be focusing less on cutting costs and more on making sure that they have the capacity and the resiliency to weather these types of disruptions in the future. So companies are going to be bringing a lot of their operations closer to home. So yay, reshoring and nearshoring. Why did I say nearshoring? Nearshoring, yes. So 75% of companies said that they were reshoring operations to their home base or to neighboring countries, according to a survey of 3,000 firms. And that survey was done by Bank of America. Workforce. I'm going to take a sip of my water. I can't believe we're like almost 20 minutes in and I didn't get a sip in. So I'm going to do that now. That was a little, yeah. Okay, I'm back. So in workforce news, new leadership, right? New leadership can change company culture and business practices. So one of the things that I have been talking about and kind of getting really excited about is changing of the guards. I am really excited to see more millennials taking on leadership roles, and also Gen Z. One of the things that I really get excited about is being able to, some of the values that are actually linked to millennials is this transparency, trust, autonomy, overall well-being of the person, and really taking making sure that the person is being put first, right? So they are able to balance their values and think about what their impact is going to be on the world. So that is something that I'm really looking forward to. But as we talk about burnout, I'm curious to hear what it is that companies are doing to avoid employee burnout, especially in the retail environment. I know that obviously people are wanting to incentivize employees around making sure that they are meeting sales goals and that sort of thing. I talked about last week how a lot of retailers are being held against 2019 numbers. In some cases, that's a good decision. In some cases, it's questionable. Um, but some retailers actually have started offering, uh, or more retailers are offering bonuses or commissions based on sales. And one of the things that I thought was really sweet is several years ago, Bonobos actually did an advent calendar, but they did an advent calendar to as a form of employee appreciation. And some of the goals were sales related, and some of them were really focused around team building. And I would like to see more of that happening in our retail environments. But I'm also really curious, to think about um, how you are caring for your retail employees is impacting your return rate and your shrink rate, right? Um, how willing are your employees to sort of stand firm around, company policies? Is there, one of the things that I have found is that regardless of how rigid a store's return policy is, employees just aren't willing to go toe to toe with customers the way that they were before, and are taking things back without question. And I'm curious because I feel like um, we talked about the old school and the new school. There's so many, growing up, there weren't a lot of stipulations around returns, right? If you were unsatisfied with a product, it was taken back. It was taken back because people wanted to ensure that you were a happy and satisfied customer. So, again, just curious to see how employee well-being is impacting those metrics, right? So, what is your return rate, and also what is your shrink rate? Although, in terms of shrink, I don't know. I feel like that there was always sort of this desire to like be a hero and stop theft in stores. And as a leader, I was just sort of like, don't fight it, right? Because where there's a will, there's a way. If they want to steal something, they're going to figure out how to do it, right? And I feel like uh, some of the things that have been taking place, like even with these grab and goes, like people have gotten like way more brazen with their tactics. So it's not worth the risk. And also, you have a shrink rate, so that to an extent is a write off for the company. So don't put yourself at risk. But again, curious to see how that is being impacted and how employee well-being kind of correlates to those two rates. So also in service news, the Great Resignation is being renamed the Great Revolt, right? So workers aren't just looking for higher pay. They are looking for more time off, more days at home. They are questioning, right, the whole meaning behind the daily grind. And there was a recent article that talked about this, and how to create a better workforce, right? So apparently 84% of US workers say poorly trained managers create a lot of unnecessary stress. Again, I talked about this. There's definitely a need for leadership training at the store level and at the middleman throughout retail. Let's be honest, right? 57% say that they have quit jobs because of bad bosses, and 50% of employees feel their own performance would improve if their bosses received the right kind of manager training. So interesting. Also, people are saying you actively need to be addressing burnout. Three main components of burnout are emotional exhaustion, lack of accomplishment, and a depletion of empathy, right? And we are also looking for how to change the way that you define and measure work, right? Recognize and reward your loyal talent, um, which is actually an issue that came up with Starbucks, right? And why they are looking to unionize, and part of some of the asks that they have. The other thing that's really important to recognize is the HR teams, right? Your talent teams, right? They are spread thin, right? With all of these strains on the workforce, those teams have been put into overdrive. So it's really important to recognize what the needs of your HR team are, and make sure that they are taking time to rest and get the appreciation that they deserve too. So, now we're at the green carpet. So the green carpet, for those of you who are new to this, the green carpet is where we take a deeper dive into and talk about what brands and concepts and processes are being called to the proverbial carpet, green carpet for sustainability. I feel like there are, right? It's not even a feeling. There are a lot of ethical dilemmas within the sustainable fashion world and just the fashion world in general. And so, again, I want to make sure that we are creating space for open dialogue, right? This is where I can truly try to put into practice this calling people in versus calling them out. Right. So I also wanted to thank Professor Loretta Ross, who is a professor at Smith College, who inspired this thinking in me. I listened to TED Radio Hour, not last weekend, but the weekend before, where she talked about this this notion of calling people in. So big news. Remake came out last week with a fashion accountability report. And it is very interesting. Very interesting. I actually have set some time aside this week to really go through it in depth. But they took a look at 60 fashion companies, and the 6 points of evaluation were sustainability, traceability, wages and well-being, commercial practices, raw materials, environmental justice and climate change, and then governance and diversity and inclusion. So each fashion company could score up to 150 points. The average company scoring was 17 points. Yeah, isn't that crazy? 17 points. The lowest scoring company scored a negative 13. And I'm going to actually see who was the lowest scoring company. I don't want to put people on blast here, but it was interesting to see who was the companies that were on this list. So negative 13, Forever 21, not surprised, and Ross, Dress for Less. Global Brands Group had a negative 12, TJX 11. I won't go through the whole list because it's a long list, 60 companies here. So the highest score being 83 points. But overall, big brands in retailer, whether they were luxury, high street, or fast fashion, they are not taking on systemic reform needed in order to counter the negative impact of fashion on people and the planet. So they scored 16, and this is almost a direct quote, right, from the report there, but they scored 16 small and medium-sized brands. And this is where they actually found the most forward-thinking approaches, right, that provided a glimpse into reimagining fashion of the future. So those experts scored 4 times higher. So the average rate between those small and medium-sized brands were 37 points on average. And the big companies, I think, scored a 9 on average. We're going to stop this here. That's my little half-hour timer, but we're almost at the end anyway. So, so that's really interesting. I definitely encourage people to take a deeper look at this. One of the things that they have a couple of recommendations here, or not necessarily recommendations, but talk about what their findings are. And I'm going to give you a little side eye while I read this here. But they talk a lot about resale being on the rise, the role that data plays, and how critical that is, living wages, small and medium-sized brands consistently are outperforming fashion giants. European brands are outpacing American corporations in human rights leadership. Discount chains and big box stores are lagging in this change. They talk a lot about greenwashing becoming the norm, and woke washing and co-opting language around diversity, inclusion, and environmental justice. So obviously there is a tremendous amount of work to be done. And it was, again, interesting to see sort of the brands that were scored and where they sort of ranked. Again, like a lot of brands, there's some things that I wasn't really surprised about, but then there were also some brands who are sort of known for their sustainability efforts, and their rating was fairly low. In any case, speaking of, according to a New York Times article that came out on December 10th, Patagonia CEO Ryan Gelbart has said there's a special place in hell for companies that are not actively seeking to turn back climate change. So, again, more calling out, right? Versus calling in. So how is that statement actually going to support change? I also want to note that Patagonia's remake score was 27 out of 50. Right? Now, keep in mind the highest score, I believe, was 87. So they still have a lot of work to do, to be perfectly honest. And again, I don't think that finger wagging is really going to help facilitate change. It may get you in the New York Times, right? And that's great press. But how is that actually going to impact change? So that's that. And I think that is it. So we are past the half-hour mark. Thank you so much for joining and sitting through this. To be perfectly honest, I didn't want to show up today. I was feeling funky when I got out of bed, and I was just like, good grief. I was like, do I really have to do this? And I gave myself a little pep talk, and I put on my side pony and my fuzzy sweater and my red lips, and I decided that I was going to show up. So here I am. In any case, we are almost out of time. Again, announcements. I already talked about announcements, but I do have a new newsletters coming out this week for those of you who are signed up for the newsletter. Again, there is a workshop happening on Thursday for that's focused on 2022 planning. There are a few seats left. This is an easy next step to scaling your business. So please sign up for that if you are interested. And I also mentioned the executive roundtables that are taking place. So again, we will be doing this every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our mission is to support a more diverse and inclusive sustainable fashion industry by filling in the leadership and ownership gaps in the apparel supply chain. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week. All right, bye. Thanks.